Hi, everyone. This is Jason Briack of Wall Street from Main Street and Eric Dubin. Welcome back to episode 4 of our new podcast, Welcome to Dystopia. Today's special guest is one of my favorites for entertainment value. He combines financial education and entertainment. His real name is Richard Daughty, but everyone knows him as the Mogambo Guru. Richard, thank you for joining us again.
Well, thank you for having me here. It's a real honor and a pleasure to be with you.
Now, Mogambo, in terms of what's been going on in the world, there's obviously a lot that's been going on, but there's so many.
You think so? I hadn't noticed. What do you think? Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Your job's always getting easier. Rich
He's a master of the understatement.
Well, I like to underpromise and overdeliver. So. I don't like to be an underachiever.
There you go.
Anyways, though, Mogambo, are you surprised that the people in power, the economic and political elites, the IMF people, the Wall Street people, the central bankers, the politicians, are you surprised that they've been able to keep kick the can down the road and keep things going a lot longer and preventing collapse?
Well, no. People, that's what I'm thinking about here lately, is people just don't understand the concept of a fiat currency. It is literally possible for the Federal Reserve to create, at its whim, in an instant, enough money to buy up everything that exists. The fact that they don't do it just shows that they know some of the ramifications of such a thing, but it's literally possible. So can you kick the can down the road for a long time? Sure, you hadn't even seen it. This hadn't even gotten started yet. This is going to get crazier from here.
Yeah, in your piece, you talk about, in your new piece, which our listeners should go read, it's on your website, mogamboguru.com, and it's also on Lou Rockwell picked it up, and it's about the $250,000 speech that Ben Bernanke is getting for speech, which is ridiculous in and of itself. Welcome to Dystopia. Hello.
You got your checkbook ready for Mogambo, right, Jason?
Yeah, if he wants to come up to DC and he wants dinner, if he wants to come up to DC and hang out and have a couple drinks and some dinner, sure, but I don't have $250,000 lying around.
Oh, damn, now you tell me.
Click.
Click.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not David Einhorn yet, although I've put in a lot of work in my career, and maybe one day I will be, but I'm not quite David Einhorn yet, where I can pay, Ben Bernanke $250,000 to come to dinner where he can lie to me to my face.
Yeah, that would be nice to have such wealth at one's fingertips, but alas, what can one do?
He gives Bill Clinton a speaking fees run for his money.
Yeah, he had to be married to Hillary first, though. So.
Yeah, right, there you go.
There's a penalty involved.
Hey, Ben, take notes.
There's a price to be paid for everything.
Hey, Hillary doesn't give him any shit for him cheating. So I mean, I guess in public, they're they have their business. It's like a business relationship. It's not even a real marriage.
Yeah, well, that's the way it often turns out. As it turns out, that's a shame of it all. Anyway,
let's talk about Greece. That's something on everyone's mind right now. Do you guys think, Eric and Mogambo, do you think Greece is going to be allowed to actually default? Are they going to be used as a sacrificial lamb like Lehman Brothers was?
Go ahead, Eric.
Well, I mean, the powers that be certainly don't want contagion to spread like wildfire, but at the same time, they clearly have drawn a line in the sand where they don't want the risk of Spain and Italy and their respective populations getting any bright ideas about saying, hey, you cut a debt restructuring and debt reduction plan with Greece. We want the same, and therefore that's why the Troika has taken such a hard line, and we're where we are now, where essentially Greece is in a technical default. The IMF today was, it wasn't the IMF, it was a Greek government official who was not attributed by name, but said basically that the IMF is going to consider Greece to be in arrears on their payments. And eventually, later this coming month, it'll switch over to technical default, and the International Swaps and Derivatives Association will probably do what they did with Cyprus back in 2010, if memory serves, where they basically say, it's a technical default, not a commercial default, so all you people holding the credit default swaps, well, tough. You're not going to get your insurance payment on that, so that'll kind of put in the reins on the domino cascading implosion in the derivatives market to some extent. It'll reduce a lot of that risk. And, capital controls today, bank holiday, no international transactions being allowed out of Greece, ATM withdrawals of only 60 euros per day. All of these things are set up so that they can try to, in their hope and theory, ring fence Greece and the ramifications of what's going on now. And then, behind the scenes, we probably got gigantic swap lines going on with the Fed right now and the ECB, and the ECB dumping in liquidity, even not out in the open so that people can see it, and the plunge protection team working to support the markets. I mean, Dow down 300 plus points or whatever is probably only a third of what would have happened today if the people weren't behind the scenes managing stuff. So, it's a slow motion train wreck. I think it's going to keep going. And like I said, on the show that Doc and I did on Friday at Silver Doctors, in the long run, 2016, I suspect Brexit will happen. Even Mohammed El Arian today came out on Bloomberg and said that he believes there's 85% chance of Brexit now, even in the short term. So it's now becoming mainstream consensus thinking that the probabilities of Brexit are just going much, much higher.
Yeah, and Greece doesn't have the world reserve currency, so if they do go back to the drachma and they start printing money, it's not going to be like the U.S. dollar where it's viewed as being stronger than it really is, and they can just export the dollars to other countries they trade with. So I guess then if Greece does leave the euro and they go out on their own, and I've listened to interviews with Dave Kranzler on SGT Report, and he says, maybe the banks warned the politicians there that they can't do it. They can't go out on their own, so maybe they'll take whatever deal is given to them, and they'll just keep trying to come up with new ways to kick the can down the road, hoping they get bailed out. But it sounds like the politicians in power in Greece, they've been raping and pillaging. I think there's allegations that one of them stole over $5 million already from, different accounts and things like that. So it doesn't surprise me that they're looking for money that's hidden and, trying to leave the country and stuff like that. But Mogambo, is this just all getting ridiculous at this point? Like, there seems like so many other European countries that have even worse financial problems than Greece. Greece is a small economy, but yes, it does have financial problems. But these other European economies have just as bad, if not worse, problems.
Yeah, well, the bottom line is that a lot of people are going to lose a lot of money. And who are the lot of people that are going to lose a lot of money? Well, it's the pensions and the union funds and all that's individual stocks and bonds and all the things written, derivatives against the stock market. So I got to make sure nothing happens to that. No one is allowed to lose money now. It's just a matter of money. And so they can create all the money they want. The ECB has a fiat currency just like we have. What do you think fueled the big boom that they've had over the last, 15 years or so? The same thing that fueled ours. Our stock market's up so high, houses up so high, government's so big, government's so expensive. It's just getting out of hand. Inflation in prices is going to be the result. And so the price to pay, but can they keep it levitated by just giving them more money? Sure, it's the easiest thing in the world for these guys. They can buy it for themselves. The Federal Reserve itself created money to buy assets. It admits it.
Japan's doing it too. Yeah, Japan admitted it too. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they can keep on doing it. They can literally create enough money instantly to buy everything that exists and bail out Greece and everybody. They can buy up all that debt and just give them the money.
Yeah, I'm surprised they haven't done it already. I'm surprised the Federal Reserve hasn't said, here's a currency swap to the ECB. We're going to give Greece. Here's a couple $100 billion loan, 0% interest. You can pay it back in 50 years. No big deal.
Well, the ECB doesn't want the Spain and Italian people thinking, gee, we deserve the same because the debt that they hold is bigger in aggregate. It's not as big in percentage of GDP terms, but it's bigger in terms of euro terms.
Sure. So it's just basically a large amount of money that people are going to lose if these things go down. If the stock market goes down, if bond prices go down. They got to make sure that these things don't happen. They're going to do it as long as they can. Look at the alternatives. The alternative is exactly what Aaron said. We're talking about our Armageddon. everything worth zero. Things in flame rioting in the streets. They don't want that, and they can stop that by just merely printing up a few quadrillions worth of dollars and euros. Well, sure, let's do that.
Yeah, and this is why, guys, I don't think they'll allow, deflation where the asset prices stay low. Maybe they'll allow it for 6 months or 12 months or something like that. But then they're going to come back with even larger money printing programs. Either they're going to be overt, where they're going to announce, we're doing new quantitative easing money printing, or it's just going to be covert programs like the currency swaps. So they may allow the asset prices to temporarily drop, but I agree with you guys in nominal value. I don't think they're going to allow the stock market, the general stock market index, the bond market, or key real estate markets. I don't think they're going to allow them to stay down for long.
We've already seen that historically.
Yeah, members of Congress don't get reelected if they allow the Federal Reserve to do that to us. Remember, the chairman of the Federal Reserve serves at the whim of the president and the Congress, basically. And they can be fired any time, and their policies reversed at any time. So I don't think they got the nerve to stand up and say, we're going to cause a lot of pain for everybody instead of just printing a lot of money.
Yeah, and with 2016 being a presidential election year, I mean, there's going to be a lot of focus on keeping the little people happy so that they keep voting in the scoundrels that are lording over us.
Excellent point, Eric. That's exactly right. It's an election year. Come on.
Yeah, normally in election years, guys, they don't, this is from a historical standpoint in the United States at least, they don't allow the stock market to fall. Right. There's one or two examples, but the majority of them they don't. So they try to come up with ways to goose the stock market higher. So maybe the plunge protection team, the one or both of them, either the exchange stabilization fund or the working, all of them, yeah. Yeah,
and the fund managers in Wall Street, remember the financial services industry is the biggest business in America. It's 40% of the profits made in America is made by the financial services industry. So they're going to be behind that thing. You can bet your bottom dollar on that.
I want to transition now to the gold market. I don't think anyone except for the people in the mainstream media or the World Gold Council will dispute that China, India, Russia, the Middle East are accumulating massive amounts of physical gold. Why do you think China is accumulating so much physical gold?
That's such a softball one. I should answer that because I'm so stupid I really can't come up with it. Eric, I'm sure you got something to explain it easily where I would stumble around.
Well, they just want to increase the confidence in their financial system and their underlying currency, and they realize the store value function of gold. They're hedging against the 1.3 trillion or whatever they have now in U.S. Treasuries, and God knows what they have hiding for agency paper. And so, gold flows to where the rise in economic and geopolitical power is, and that's China right now, unfortunately, given the basket case that our government represents. I mean, you have to try hard to screw things up as bad as the United States has in the last 20 years.
Do you guys think it's...
Go ahead.
Do you think then it's sustainable for the gold and silver price to stay this low? Because we're a good amount below the all-in production costs of many of the miners. I mean, they've cut production costs the last 18 to 24 months, but a good amount of them are still running at big losses. Steve St. Angelo of SRS Rocco Report has detailed analysis of this, and there's no profits, haven't been for a long time. How much longer is it sustainable then for the paper metals prices to stay this low?
As long as China wants them to be this low. They could control any market they want, and the gold and silver markets are just tiny little blips on the radar compared to the size of the stock market and the size of the bond market. These are just little irritating little flies buzzing around all that money, and so they want to keep it low, and so they will keep it low, and they can extort if we don't work along with them. They can extort our compliance by threatening all kinds of things. We owe money.
They're playing along as well. They're in a position where, as the cartel that's largely Western based and mostly focused on U.S. Anglo-American interests, that China is in a beneficial position to just hoover up whatever they can without pushing the needle higher on price-wise. And they've done a damn good job doing that. And even this whole, shift away from Hong Kong as being the import window with a lot of subterranean gold flowing into China and not being reported gives the opportunity for the Bloombergs of the world to be bozos and say, oh, the world exporting to China is down, when in fact it's not. I mean, all you have to look at is the offtake of the Shanghai Gold Exchange over the last 2 years and see that it's continuing at a full head of steam. I mean, they don't grow gold on trees inside the Shanghai Gold Exchange. It has to come from somewhere. And they're running at like 2,000 metric ton rate of offtake, and that gold is now exceeding by a long shot what they report coming into Hong Kong. So it's just, demand for gold in China is on par with the peak that they've been running at for 2 years now. So and they're supporting the market and still being able to get away with lower prices because the COMEX and LBMA paper trade pushes the price down.
Mogambo, why do you think the people in the West don't like gold that much? Is it brainwashing? Are they have no common sense? Are they just brainwashed Keynesians? What's your opinion on why people in the East like gold so much and people in the West really don't?
Well, the people in the West here, we have Keynes regarding gold as a barbarous relic, and it's sort of being a dead asset. It sort of is. I mean, you buy gold and you put the gold under your bed, and so the money's out there, but you don't. Your asset is not producing anything. They think it's much better that if you don't have gold and you have producing assets, using that money to buy stocks, which makes companies go and the economy whirl around and all the kind of stuff going on. So that whole dead asset thing has been going on for a long time. And they don't want it right now. They sure don't want anybody watching the price of gold rising meteorically, because people are going to say, what in the world is going on here? And they're going to panic, and the panic is what causes a lot of these economic problems. And so they're trying to keep from scaring the women folk and the livestock, just make everything nice and even. They don't want gold to go up, so they're doing everything they can, like every other government agency. I mean, it's not. These guys lie about everything. Everything the government says anymore is a lie, trying to maintain this weird fiction that things are just fine when they're obviously not.
You remember when the Obama administration was advertising to recruit people from the social sciences for the quote-unquote nudge teams? I think that was like 18 months ago or so. I mean, these guys, our government is so out in the open when it comes to propaganda that they're, advertising for people to be recruited for propaganda teams. I mean, that's what things about it. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. It's getting to that point where it's just taking a lot of, getting back to the principle of entropy. If you leave just things alone, it doesn't take much energy to maintain an empty field that you ignore. But it takes a lot of energy to turn that acre into a lawn with flower beds and all these other kind of manicured everything. It takes a lot of energy, and that's the way it is with everything else, too. We've got to the point where it just takes so much dollars and so much energy to maintain this gigantic edifice of services and goods.
Yeah, even on our debt, you can quantify that it takes
hiring all those people.
Like,
what 40% of the federal government budget goes to basically welfare, helping people out, social services.
That ridiculous. Yeah, and it's like the potency of this Keynesian experiment of adding more and more monetary expansion in the form of debt. And our fiat system is such that it's 10 times less effective than it was even a decade and a half ago.
Yeah, well, the Keynesian multiplier never worked from the beginning. I mean, he said the Keynesian, I think when he released the general theory, Keynes said the Keynesian multiplier would be for every dollar the government spends, it would produce $4 in GDP.
Right.
And then he was adamant that ratio would hold, and then it started collapsing like almost immediately. And it's never gotten, I think for every dollar of the government spends, now it produces less than 10 cents of GDP. And they're obviously using fraudulent GDP statistics, so it probably doesn't even produce 1 cent at this point.
Yeah, it would work even the absence of everything else, the taxation and regulatory structure. The problem with Keynesian multiplier is, yes, it does work when you're injecting the money into the economy. It works like a charm. The problem is when you try to withdraw that money, it also has a multiplier in the opposite direction. And that's the problem, part they never talk about. So you put $1 in, you got a multiplier of 4, so you get $4 worth of economic activity. But you stop adding that dollar into the economy. The dollar is missing out of the economy, and it produces $4 of loss in the economy. So multiplier works both ways. I forgot to tell you the ugly part.
Well, Keynesian economics believes in the unlimited growth paradigm, right? That he can just manipulate and print over the business cycle. But obviously we're seeing a lot of malinvestment now, and whether it's China or Japan or the United States or Europe, there's going to be a price to pay at some point. And I don't know, maybe the printing press will eventually be taken away when more people wake up.
Well, it's funny you should mention that infinite growth thing, always growing. That's the problem I had with taking economics in macroeconomics in graduate school. I just could not grasp the concept where you owe so much money that by lowering the interest rate, you're going to increase your debt load because the interest rate went down. And so, it keeps you going along, and it never reaches an end. It never comes to the end. And so that's a big question I had with that. I thought maybe I was just too stupid to grasp it because my grades were bad. I didn't understand Keynesian economics at all. It is weird. It does things that they assume. They get these long equations with variables they're making guesses about. So guesses about guesses about guesses about guesses about guesses, and they give it to you as a number to 3 decimal points of precision.
Yeah, these models are all fraudulent, and they're making bad assumptions. And when you put garbage into statistics, right, you get garbage out. So, yeah. And yet, these Keynesians like Bernanke, and I think Paul Krugman is claiming how great his formulas have been. Look at this guy's track record. I mean, Paul Krugman has he been right about anything in the last 15 or 20 years? I think he's been pretty much a contrarian indicator to the point where almost everything he predicts, almost the exact opposite occurs.
Isn't that weird that he still gets the renown that he has? He's the one that said the original quantitative easing of the banks and whatnot didn't really work because they didn't do it large enough. Well, they have doubled the national debt in, 6 years? That's not large enough, and look what a failure it is. This man is delusional. How can evidence stare you in
Useful
the face
idiot.
every day for 15 years, like you said, and not come to the conclusion, hey, maybe I'm wrong here?
Oh, no, he just put out a piece, I think, where he was saying, like, anyone who's saying austerity or free market Austrian school has been completely wrong and saying how right his models were. He just, Eric and I were talking about this, about perception management with his reputation, whether he has a selective memory or what. It's just really funny.
Well, he's got nothing to lose by trying to, he's just thrashing at it. He's a drowning man clutching at straws, and so, yes, it's perfectly natural that he would take that approach.
Well, a lot of these guys, too, have a yes-man contingent, following them around and patting them on the back and saying, yeah, you're a great guy. And they kind of live in a bubble.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, they all got it. They got houses. They got mortgages to pay. They're paying on their cars. They got, who knows, putting their children through college. I mean, they got all those expenses, and they can't stand up and say, hey, stop paying me money because I'm not worth it. I've been wrong.
Yeah, they're probably driving around in their Mercedes or BMW or Rolls Royce in a $2 million mansion, and then we're putting their kids in Ivy League school. So Ben Bernanke's son, I think, has almost $200,000 in student loan debt from Ivy League schools.
Good for him.
Well, I want to ask you, Mogambo, about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP. It seems most people in Congress weren't even allowed to read the bill that they signed into law, and they're not allowed to publicly talk about it. How much does this disgust you that, it seems these lobbyists, these large corporations who don't want to compete, who aren't really capitalists, that they're getting these bills passed while, the mainstream media doesn't even cover any of this, and, all they do is talk about these stories about racism and things like that, while, these economic bills are potentially going to collapse the economy?
Well, the reason that he's doing it is because there's a lot of money in it to be made by corporations. That's what's going on. There's money to retrain the workers. Retrain them to do what? I have no idea. But there's all kinds of incentives for employers to create jobs for these guys and to fund schools, student loans to help these people be retrained. There's money to be made, and that's why it's so secret. There's lots and lots of money to be made. Treasonous acts are not put down on paper, so I'm not worried about it being treasonous, but there's a lot of money coming out that's going to be going to these corporations for the employees. That's what I figured.
Eric, what's your opinion about the TPP and how secretly it's been passed, based on, I don't even think I've heard it mentioned once in the mainstream media.
What not being mentioned once in the mainstream?
The Trans-Pacific Partnership. I don't even think I've heard it once. They're still talking about the Confederate flag, and South Carolina is the majority of stuff going on right now, and today it's been the stock market declining based on Greece, but I don't think I've heard the TPP really mentioned at all.
It gets coverage in the business press, but very little beyond that, and it's not considered a story that's sexy, and they'll bring in readers or viewers or what have you, so that's primarily why you don't see it, but it's also, a lot of there's been so much concentration in the American media that, 5 companies own 95% of the mainstream, and a good deal of that is actually financial interests as well. Bloomberg, for example, is a great example of somebody who his personal fortune as well as the interests of the financial services industry in total would benefit by this basically a crony capitalist set up for expanding and protecting their ability to have access to markets worldwide with less regulation from the domestic governments getting in the way of making profits of pushing paper around. So the chapter in TPP about financial services is not really about lowering any kind of tariff restrictions or whatnot. It's basically addressing the effort to push regulations of the financial industry and all the participating countries down such that the Wall Street interests can come in and start making lots and lots of money. TPP has 29 chapters. 5 of the chapters deal with quotas and tariffs, and then the rest is basically just a fiesta of welfare for multinational corporations and furthering the expansion of their ability to have the concentration of their market activities in their markets further. So, you get less of the mom-and-pop type, activity in any given economy of all these 12 participating nations, and it's more corporate welfare for the top. And it reduces sovereignty amongst the participating nations because tribunals are going to be set up that will resolve any kind of dispute that comes about when a company says, hey, this country is being restrictive on my investments and they need to be fined $400 billion and go get them, and that can override the local court system and the national court even all the way up to the top. So it's a real stinker of a deal. They market it as a promotion of trade, but it's really not, a capitalist fostering type of trade concept. It's more about corporate welfare.
Yep, in short, it's always about the money. It's about the money. It's always about the money.
And concentrating of power, political and economic, amongst multinational corporations that are now supra-sovereign. They ride above the sovereignty of any given nation.
Well, power.
Yeah, I live right outside of Washington D.C., so I'm sure the lobbyists on K Street, I'm sure they're going to be buying really nice Lamborghinis and Ferraris. I see them since it's the summer now and the weather's nicer here. I see all the nice cars out around where I live, and people driving very expensive cars. And I'm sure the lobbyists on K Street are going to be doing very well with all these new legislations and regulations and bills passed for their large clients.
I forget who it was that did the study, but they took basically all the congressmen and women who voted for the Trade Promotion Authority last week or whenever it was. It's kind of getting squirrely in my head with all the crap that's going on. But it worked out to something like $17,000 per 435 members of Congress. I mean, per person. It's ridiculous what K Street is doing.
Yeah, I think some of the top politicians didn't like Paul Ryan get like $2 million for voting yes on the bill and things like that donated to his campaign contributions. I think there was like a long list of that last week.
Yeah.
Well, that's the problem with corruption. It's always greatest at the end of long booms.
So
because
true.
it's the long booms that provided all the money that created all the ability to be so corrupt. And so at the end of a long boom, everything is corrupt.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's harder to find, gentlemen, I don't know if you agree with this, but I think it's harder to find like a market or an industry that's not corrupt than ones that are at this point.
Yeah. And yet they say, I mean, what has the Obama legal department, the Attorney General done? What's the FCC done? I mean, the COMEX, I mean, it's everything. It's so obvious. It's been documented so well that these guys are ripping everybody off, that yet nothing is. How many bankers went to prison? How many of them? None. What did they do? The worst kind of crimes that you can think of. But yet not one of them was even censured as far as I know.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's turned everything upside down, and for the people who are honest and hardworking and want to do the right thing, it's putting perverse incentives into the economy and the system that, you know, the people who lie and cheat and have money, they can get whatever they want whenever they want. So it's just really messed up, the incentive structure that's been put into society.
It's grown so gradually over time that really no one's even noticed. It's like in the cost of things. I mean, in the 60s, you could get a brand new car for $3,000. Now that same car is like $30,000. So it happens so gradually that people just accept it. Yeah, $30,000 for an average car. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, they just say, oh, those greedy corporations keep raising the prices. They don't think, you know, that it's the value of the money, right, that keeps falling, not that it's the evil, greedy corporations that just want to keep raising their prices every single year.
Well, the corporations exist to make a profit, and the only way they can make a profit is to get more money than it costs them to make things. And when it costs you more money to make things, you make less profit. And so the shareholders get grumpy. That's the point of them owning the stock, is to make money. And so they have to make money somehow. They can cut expenses, they can raise prices, and they choose both usually. But raising prices is always in there if they can, and they can. And do.
Well, Well, I want to start moving on to our next section. Mogambo, we have a Scumbag of the Week segment where we nominate.
Where we nominate. Oh no.
You're not going to be nominated.
That wouldn't happen anymore.
Well, we nominate the corrupt government official, politician, bureaucrat, government agent who's done something really embarrassingly bad or stupid or evil or corrupt or greedy.
Well, I like it. So, very interesting.
Yeah, so this week I want to talk about a couple nominees. One of them was from last week. It was the Office of Personnel Management. More news is coming out about the data breach. It's over 10 million people had their data, a lot of their data stolen, and including like people who were using their government email address and a government expense account, I guess, to pay for sex websites. So now there was a story out about that, talking about how now key government employees with high security clearances will potentially be blackmail candidates for foreign spies. So that was one. Yep. But if you ask like a lot of people who favor government, the government bureaucrat, the person who works for the government, they're honest and hardworking, and you know they want a better society for everyone. And they would never use the government expense account that they have to pay for all these expenses and hookers and prostitutes and things like that. But they should come to D.C. and live here for a number of years and get to meet people, off the record, government employees that I know. And, I've heard a whole bunch of stories from people who are, upper management of government agencies saying that, they can't get their employees to stop stealing from their expense accounts $3,000 a month. They can't fire them. It's just there's employees who show up at 11 a.m. almost every day to work, drunk or hungover. They take hour plus 2-hour lunches. There's a lot of these examples.
Yeah, that's the way it is. When you can't fire somebody, pretty soon they get to be out of hand, and that's exactly what's happening. But there are people all businesses report that employees are watching pornography on company time, and they're taking an hour and a half for lunch once in a while, and coming in drunk, and a lot of that's going on. But they get fired in the private sector. They don't get fired in government. They just accumulate. Hire somebody else to do the guy's job. Because he's not doing his job while he's doing all the pornography. So like two guys.
Yeah, I completely agree, Mogambo, about that. If it gets done in the private sector, maybe get a warning. Maybe you're allowed to do it for a little while, unless like you're the boss's son or the boss's daughter, or you're having an affair with the boss or something like that. But you know, if you're just a regular guy and you don't know anyone in the company, you're going to get a warning if you get that, and then you're going to say either you ship up or you ship out. But in the government, I mean, sometimes, like if they know there's a bad middle manager who does it, they'll just hire 2 more employees to do his work instead because they know he won't do anything, and they'll keep him on the payroll. Sometimes he might even get a raise. There's secretaries here who just answer the phone who are in government employee unions, and they make $100,000 a year with, you know, full medical benefits with a better health insurance plans and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons is because their budget is determined by them just merely asking for it. And then if somebody else appropriates the money, then everything's fine. In the real world, you can't do that. They have to make a profit on it. How do you make any money?
Or you have to be a technology company, Richard, and you have to say that, oh, we can grow our revenue, right? So if you're a technology company, no matter what even if you don't have a business plan, oh, we have a technology company, we have likes or users and stuff like that. If you can find investors and you can show them some type of growth metric that's doing well, you could probably raise money. It looks like we may be entering another technology bubble here, too, again.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that goes on in the real world. In the government world, they just merely ask for more money. Ask for more money and more people.
Yep, that's the solution.
They get it most of the time. And more protections and more benefits.
That's the solution I always hear from my friends who are government employees, and they tell me, oh, we could get this fixed if we have more time and more money and more people and more resources. And then, you know, you see, and then you ask them about, like, well, how hard are you and your coworkers working? And then some of them will admit the truth. They're like, well, we don't try that hard. but if we had more money and more time and stuff like that, if we got paid more, maybe we would work harder. You know, I've heard that. But the funny thing, I think, is that most people don't realize is the average government salary is now higher than the average private sector salary in a lot
Oh,
of areas. So there's government employees.
Double.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought that was a really surprising statistic that the average government worker makes double of salary and benefits what the average employee in the private sector makes. And I say PolitiFact and all those people huffing around and say, oh, no, that's not true, that's not true. Ignore this and ignore that and don't ignore that, and they don't make double. They make little less than double.
Yeah, and for the first time ever, people going through college are being asked, where do you think the best place to go for your lifetime career? Government. I mean, 20 years ago, people wouldn't be saying that. They'd be saying, go on Wall Street or be a doctor or whatever, technology. But now
if you have
people
the right
are
master's
aspiring
degree
to be bureaucrats. I mean, you talk about a signal of the advanced decay of our, system. There you go.
Yeah, well, they just spent their entire lives in government schools being told that government is the solution to everybody's problem. So there's a matter of altruism, a matter of pride. You're being where change can be made. You're working for the government. Well, I've always been taught that the government is the answer for everything. They just give the government enough money and enough power, they can solve any problem. So there's a lot of that kind of egotism going on, too.
Yeah, I agree. That's the bubble that is Washington, D.C., and if you have the right master's degree and or the right Ph.D. and you come to D.C., you have a good chance either as a teacher or as the right government employee in the right government agency, you can make, 60, 65, 70, 75 grand starting salary with, full benefits, full health care and things like that. And, you can get promotions. So there's people with 2-3 degrees here making 6 figures, over 100 grand that can't be fired. Almost besides just committing a felony, basically.
And then what did we think would happen from that system? Have some fun until you're done. And so I guess that's it's like Eric said, it's a career of choice these days. You get a lot of prestige, you get a lot of money, you get a lot of benefits, you can't be fired. Man, what better job than that?
Yeah, that's why so many people are trying to move to Washington, D.C., and everyone's trying to ask their friends and stuff like that to get a government job. The people who aren't libertarian, not my friends, but like people I went to college with and stuff like that, they're like, when they graduate college, they're like, oh, can you get me a job with the government? I hear that a lot still, but not from my libertarian
I don't know how you live in Mordor and get away with it.
I don't know how much longer. It doesn't help my social life and dating, that's for sure. I saw a great documentary from this 30-year-old guy around my age who moved here a couple years ago in D.C., and he put out these small little videos, and he was talking about how much it costs to date in D.C. and how depressing it is, and I think he spent $10,000 a year on dates for DC, and he didn't get more than like 1 or 2 second dates or something like that. So he spent like $95 per date on average, and he went on a lot of dates, and he was like, I was left with nothing. So like they, I don't really want to laugh at my about the situation I'm in with my social life and my dating life. So let me just read the last nomination for Scumbag of the Week. Okay. This one I think you guys are going to really like. This has to do with the Silk Road and Ross Ulbricht trial. There's 2 federal agents charged with stealing Bitcoins. The agents are now facing charges after led a Baltimore murder for hire case against Ross Ulbricht, separate from the drugs-related charges on which he was found guilty. The murder for hire case remains pending. Prosecutors identified the agents as Carl Force, 46 years old, of Baltimore, a special agent with the Drug Enforcement Administration, and Sean Bridges, 32, of Laurel, Maryland, a special agent with the U.S. Secret Service. Force was a lead agent in the case and was the main investigator communicating with Ulbricht. Force is charged with wire fraud, theft of government property, money laundering, and conflict of interest. Bridges was the computer forensics expert on the case. He is charged with wire fraud and money laundering. Force allegedly set up fake online personas and tried to extort money from Ulbricht, including once trying to get $250,000 from him in exchange for not providing information to federal investigators, the criminal complaint says. Using the online persona French Maid, Force did succeed in getting $100,000 in Bitcoin from Ulbricht, which Force deposited in his personal accounts, the federal complaint says. He later used a series of Bitcoin and personal U.S. dollar transactions, including a $235,000 wire transfer to an account in Panama to launder the stolen money, prosecutors allege in the complaint. According to prosecutors, Force also used his position as an executive at a digital currency exchange called CoinMKT, in which he was an investor, to seize accounts of customers. He transferred almost $300,000 in illegally seized digital currency to his personal accounts. And then finally, this Bridges guy allegedly stole almost $1 million to $820,000 using a series of wire transfers to move Bitcoin that earlier had been stolen from Silk Road in early 2013 and deposited in Japanese Bitcoin exchange Mt. Gox. So these are the guys who were in charge of investigating Ross Ulbricht, the creator of the Silk Road. So I don't know. It doesn't sound like the investigation was that honest and transparent, guys.
Well, I don't know what to say. It just the problems he had involved. I mean, what a hassle going wire transfers to other accounts and these fictitious names and being a French maid.
And this isn't Ross Ulbricht who was convicted of being Dread Pirate Roberts and sentenced to his life in prison. This was the 2 main government agents who were in charge of investigating him. Yeah, so I mean, and look how corrupt they are.
Yeah, but that's a government for you, and they're not going to let one of their own go down. They might throw up a sacrificial lamb once in a while, maybe these guys, and seize their assets if it makes it worthwhile. But that's the kind of thing going on everywhere, all over the place, I'm afraid to say.
Yep, but there's so many people out there, guys, and there's a lot of progressives. A lot of them are progressives more than neocons. Neocons tend to, I want the economy to be good, like Donald Trump. He's like, but we need to be more war-oriented, or we need to prevent illegal immigrants and stuff like that. But the progressives are the ones who defend, big government. If there's regulatory capture now, if we had, more government agents, more rules and regulations, everything would be fine. Richard, I don't know if you listened to the last Welcome to Dystopia podcast. We did one on robots and automation. There was a guy who wrote a book about how, why don't we just there's going to be a lot more robots and automation taking people's jobs. Why don't we just give everyone $50,000 a year? They don't have to work. We'll just tax everything a lot more. We'll put more rules and regulations in, and society will be just fine.
Well, actually, you don't even need to do that. You can give everyone $50,000 a year and just create the money out of thin air. That's what the Federal Reserve does, and so it saves a whole lot of hassle. But they can do that anytime they want. The problem is that inflation and prices will follow. And everyone has to pay the higher prices for things because these few people got $50,000 more apiece for a long time. You just can't do this kind of thing without paying an inflationary price, and that's why we got the inflation in the prices of everything these days. The price of the stock market, prices of bonds, prices of houses, prices of student debt, prices of everything that just reach unbelievable maximum. So we've had that kind of inflation, and so now we've got to look forward to some inflation in food and energy.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the name of the game is stagflate and lie. So I think they're going to try to prop up asset prices as long as they can. Maybe they'll allow them to fall for a short amount of time, then they'll prop them back up. They're obviously going to underreport the amount of inflation in healthcare and food and energy and rent. The rent here in the D.C. metro area just keeps going up. In so many other areas it does too, like San Francisco and New York. That doesn't. If it goes up too much, they don't count that anymore in the CPI.
Yeah, but they can lie about it, but you just can't dispute the fact. People are going to see. Last year my rent was $1,000 a month. This year it's $2,000 a month. Prices of housing have gone up. And go to the food market when you buy groceries. They know how much they spend. The government can lie all they want, but prices have gone up while incomes have not. That's not a good thing.
Well, in wrapping things up, Mogambo, I just want to thank you again for your time. How can our listeners find your old interviews and your articles if they want to continue to follow your work? Because you have a wide following from the Daily Reckoning and other places where your articles used to appear when you wrote your newsletter more regularly.
Well, that's very nice of you to ask, but to tell you the truth, I really don't know. There's a bunch of old stuff at Daily Reckoning. Of course, the guy named Doug maintains the MogamboGuru.com website where you can find the book, Economica Mogambo, the bestseller. But as far as old stuff, I wouldn't waste your time. Just buy gold and silver, and you'll be fine. Hey, that kind of rhymes. So, hey, that's got to be true. It rhymes like that.
Hey, I'd like to see you make a rap video out of that. You can put some old school Flava Flav chains on, and you can probably rent some models at $100 a day, and we could see a Mogambo gold and silver music video.
Wouldn't that be nice with lots of scantily clad lingerie models all over the place?
There you go. You might even reach a new audience with that and hit some of these government employees looking out for some good porn.
We can educate these knotheads. Hey,
there you go.
Well, Eric and I want to do an investing conference in the D.C. area. I wouldn't be surprised if we had, a whole bunch of government employees secretly show up in the audience looking like, in public bashing gold and silver and saying the economy's fine. Meanwhile, they're trying to diversify out of the dollar and get inflation hedges like oil and gold and silver and stuff. It wouldn't surprise me the least bit. I mean, from all the stuff I've heard from different sources on Wall Street and in the government that I have, that something like that is normal behavior for those types.
Well, I'm sure it is if they are half as smart as they think they are.
Maybe we should
there's no other alternative.
Maybe we should put on a lecture, how to watch porn and get away with it or something,
And retire rich by investing in gold and silver.
Well, a lot of these government employees and lobbyists, they don't have to just watch porn. They have so much money coming in, they can hire escorts, which is why there's a lot of escorts here in the D.C. area. There's a lot of women. There's a lot of women that have like that as a second job. Let's just say, I think New York City's kind of the same way.
Lobbying, supporting the economy, man. I'll tell you, there's all kinds of benefits we never even thought about.
Hey, in a free society, if there's two consenting adults, right? And
that's right.
If there's two consenting adults, why should we stop it? Why should there be a war on drugs and things like that? Has the war on drugs really worked, or is there a lot of nonviolent criminals in prison and things like that? So I mean, the Silk Road in theory, like the Silk Road, it prevented people you can't legislate away human nature. I mean, Karl Marx want to create a utopia. The socialists and progressives, they kind of want to change human behavior. But human beings, certain ones, they want sex and they want drugs, and you cannot change human nature. So whether you legislate it away or not, I mean, people are still going to want it, at least a certain percentage of the population, right?
Well, if you think about it as funneling money into the poorer sections of society, you make something illegal that everybody wants. These poor people are going to sell. There's going to be a lot of money to be made. There's going to be traffickers to be paid. There's going to be banks to be paid off. Runners, everybody, smugglers, people who store the stuff. It's going to have a gigantic impact on the people that engage in the drug trade. And so basically it's kind of a welfare program. Plus, when you catch these people and convict them, there's the prison industry to be supported. I mean, and guards have to be hired, and food has to be bought to feed these people, and overalls have to be bought so they can wear them. I mean, there's just so much money to be made by the government doing this, where if the government just legalized everything, there's really no money there.
Yeah, I agree. It's all about the money, so follow the money. who's making the most profits, whether it's the prison industrial complex or the military industrial complex, or the people fighting the drug war, or there's just so many big pharma. There's just people putting people on medications that don't even really help them. They just stop some symptoms. They don't even really cure them.
But there's a lot of money to be made in the pharmacy industry too. And not only that, but the other scary thing that scares me the most is the amount of hormones that are showing up in our drinking water and in our food. I mean, all these contraceptives have been flushed down the toilet all these years, all these decades. All those other hormones are basically showing up in our water supply, and it's changing all kinds of characteristics in fish. And why not people too? I mean, we're drinking this stuff.
Well, it's actually the case.
What's going on?
Puberty is hitting children at an earlier age now because...
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I hear there's a lot of sixth graders who watch porn on their smartphone in school.
Precocious children everywhere. Maybe there's something to be said for it. What a world we live in, huh?
Yeah, welcome to Dystopia. I mean, it's definitely like it's not quite what George Orwell said it would happen yet. I mean, there's the internet and some freedom of speech still, but with TPP and some of the other hidden things in there, and the stuff that Edward Snowden reveals, it looks like they're trying to take away our ability to produce a full-time income and survive, and then also looks like our freedom of speech is slowly being taken away as well.
Well, with the IRS basically being able to intimidate anybody. It's not that they're going to be able to suppress it by force, but by people voluntarily not speaking up anymore, just to keep it from being entangled in that whole government snarl. There is the IRS, and now with the FBI, and everybody wants to investigate you, and now the local housing inspectors are coming by. I mean, the amount of damage these people can actually cause. People will get intimidated and will shut up.
Yeah, I heard Dave Janda was investigated he was audited just because of his radio show. He says that a lot on his program. I listen to it quite a bit. I know you're on there, Eric.
Yeah, but what easier way to do it than just have some government employees call them up on the phone and say, hey, harass these people, and have your friends call in the local government do it too.
Yeah, Obama had it with the Tea Party groups, right? I think there's a lawsuit with the Campaign for Liberty right now where they're trying to get all the names of the people that have donated to Campaign for Liberty because the IRS wants access to them to audit them, right?
Yeah, and Ron Paul said go pound sand. He's refusing to reveal that information.
Well, another one of the reasons I really respect Ron Paul because his heart's almost basically always in the right place, and he's a man of principle.
Yes.
Yes, he is. In fact, I still have one of his Ron Paul for President signs in my garage. I refuse to give it away. I want to go back and revisit the past. Ron Paul for President. What a world this would be if we had done that.
Put that back out in your front lawn.
Yeah, that's what I do. My front lawn still. Yeah, that's right.
Well, even if Ron Paul won the presidency, gentlemen, I'm not sure he could do much at this point. I think it's basically a runaway train.
That's right.
I think he even said, yeah, we're all freaking doomed. And I think Ron Paul even said that if he won the presidency, I think he said he'd worried he'd be assassinated pretty quick. I think he actually said that one time.
Well, then making we're all freaking doomed a little more personal, but yes, we're freaking doomed, just like you said.
Yeah, well, I think it's important to raise awareness of like most of the stuff that's going on. So everyone isn't freaking doomed, but maybe if more people wake up, maybe we'll at the grassroots level we can start some type of movement to fix things.
Yeah, I mean, let's inject some optimism here. The reality is that powers that be are rolling out a surveillance state with police state apparatus at the ready to pull off the shelf anywhere they wish, including national. And they're not doing this because they think that there's no risks out there. They're very cognizant of the fact that in the final analysis, consent of the governed is what tyrants need to be able to get away with what they're doing. And at any given point in time, there can be whatever the catalyst is that makes the American people stand up and start fighting back. Not necessarily aggressively per se, but just politically. We have executive powers that talk about, martial law, contingency planning, and continuity of government, and all these things get reintroduced over and over again for one specific purpose, that they want to reiterate the point that from a legal point of view they're establishing their authority to act, and they do this over and over again because they fully understand that if they were out in the open with all of this, that they would face resistance. I mean, look at what's happening in Greece right now. The government has called for a referendum to basically poll the opinion of the people such that it will empower the Greek government to stand up against the Troika, and so long as the people say, yes, we now understand that being in the Eurozone and trying to cling to this idea about using the euro is a good thing, because up until this stage, something like 65% of the people in Greece have clung to the idea that the euro is actually in their best interest. I mean, they don't, as Paul Craig Roberts has been harping on in the last 2 weeks, they don't fully realize that that's their ticket to being screwed, but it all boils down to the consent of the governed, and ultimately politicians never really lead. They're always followers. And yeah, we have got this overarching oligarchy that's gone mad and is driving the economies into the ground, and the corruption's going up through the roof, and on and on and on. But in reality, the overlords are very few in number compared to the masses, and that's where our power lies. And it's, we titled the show somewhat jokingly, "Welcome to Dystopia," and things are really pretty darn ugly. But, there's still hope that if enough people wake up, things can begin to slowly turn around and, get reasonable representatives as opposed to, lackeys that are power boys for special interests.
Yeah, and in Atlas Shrugged, Ayn Rand wrote about the consent of the governed to be governed to agree to all this bullshit, and that's something like Wesley Mouch, who was the main stupid bureaucrat who wanted all the power in Atlas Shrugged. He didn't want to use force. He didn't want to use weapons or anything. He wanted everyone to agree to all his stupid rules and regulations and taxes and stuff like that. He wanted everyone's consent, and he would throw tantrums when he didn't get that. Okay, guys. Well, I really enjoyed this discussion we have, and Mogambo, I think we'll try to make you a permanent guest every so often on the Welcome to Dystopia podcast.
Well, thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here. Well, I need a passport.
Will you need a passport? Well, Dystopia is not a country yet, but if we want to get donations from our listeners, maybe we can start a Kickstarter crowdfunding campaign, and
what
people
a
can donate.
wonderful idea!
We can either create an island or a cruise ship like Peter Thiel or something like that, and we could just call it Dystopia, and we could just we can have costume contests where people wear Ben Bernanke or Janet Yellen zombie costumes and things like that, and walk around.
You can make Mogambo a border guard. You don't bring in the right tequila? Forget it, man. You're not coming on the island.
Mogambo, you can have the super soaker, the squirt gun there with the alcohol. You can be chief party officer.
Well, thank you very much. We'll talk in the future about my perk and my salary package.
Okay. Well, thanks for your time.
Thank you for having me.